Picture a village lost in the mountains of southern France. It's the summer of 1764. A 14-year-old girl heads out to tend the livestock, like every morning. She will never come home. They find her with her throat torn open, her body partly devoured. And this is only the beginning of 3 years of terror. Because in that time, something or someone will kill around 100 people in this forgotten region. And to this day, more than 250 years later, we still don't know for certain what it was. This is the story of the beast of Gévaudan. First, let's set the scene. Gévaudan was a region in southern France in what is now Lozère, a land of mountains, deep valleys and thick forests in the heart of the Massif Central. It had a reputation as a remote, isolated corner, a place where the forces of nature weren't fully tamed, and the timing matters. France in 1764 was in a wretched state. The 7 Years' War had ended a year earlier, with France suffering countless defeats at the hands of the British and the Prussians. King Louis XV had also lost most of his overseas empire, including Canada. The economy was desperate and the country was sunk in chaos. Hold on to that fact. It's going to matter for understanding what came next. The beast's first documented appearance was a warning. In the summer of 1764, a young woman was tending cattle near the Mercois forest when a huge animal came out of the trees. She later described it as wolf-like, but far bigger, the size of a calf. Twice it attacked her, and twice the bulls of the herd drove it off. She was lucky. The next one wouldn't be. The first official victim was Jeanne Boulet, a 14-year-old girl killed on June 30th, 1764, near Langogne. From there, the attacks came one after another, and here's where the story turns strange. Because this animal didn't behave like a normal predator, its victims were, almost exclusively, women and children. Its preferred target was children guarding cattle or sheep alone in the fields. After the first attacks, the locals sent shepherds out in groups, but even that didn't deter the beast. Survivors described a creature that fit no category at all. A large animal, reddish fur, stripes on its hindquarters, and a long bushy tail. According to these accounts, it wasn't a wolf, since it was bigger, it rose up on its hind legs, and above all, it attacked people, something that isn't part of normal wolf behavior. And there was something even more unsettling in the way it hunted. Two of the beast's most singular traits were its familiarity and its boldness. At least up to a point, the beast didn't seem to fear man. When it met resistance, it backed off some 40 paces, sometimes sat on its haunches for a moment, and if it wasn't chased, it attacked again. It was described as unusually aggressive, so much so that some felt its attacks were too deliberate and too ferocious to be driven by hunger alone. The news spread, and here comes the second player in this story: the press. Even though roughly 100 similar attacks occurred throughout French history, in a country then home to some 20,000 wolves, this drama arrived at just the right moment for a press hungry for sales after the 7 Years' War. The Courrier d'Avignon, then the Gazette de France, and the international papers seized on it, publishing hundreds of articles in just a few months. Suddenly, all of Europe was talking about the beast, and for the King of France, it became a matter of national pride. The authorities first recruited local hunters who failed to catch it. In November 1764, the governor of Languedoc sent a light cavalry company under Captain Duhamel, but nearly 6 months of tracking ended in total failure. There was one episode that moved the king himself. On January 12, 1765, a young man named Jacques Portefeuille and 6 friends were attacked by the beast, but they drove it off by staying together. The feat caught the attention of Louis XV, who rewarded the group. So the king sent in the professionals. He dispatched 2 wolf hunters, Jean-Charles Denneval and his son Jean-François. They arrived in February 1765 with hounds, weapons, and confidence. They hunted for months with little luck. The attacks continued. Frustrated, Louis XV turned to his own gun-bearer. The Dennevals were replaced in June 1765 by François Antoine, the king's arquebus-bearer and lieutenant of the hunt. Note the name, because for centuries he's been wrongly confused with his son, Antoine de Beauterne, and François Antoine succeeded. On September 21, 1765, he killed an enormous grey wolf, about 80 centimeters tall and 60 kilos, which became known as the Wolf of Chazes, after the nearby abbey. After more than a year of terror, the people celebrated, believing their villain lay dead at their feet. The wolf was stuffed and sent to the royal court to be displayed. For the king and the court, the case was closed. The press lost interest. France breathed again, but the beast wasn't dead. 2 months later, the attacks resumed. For another 18 months, something kept preying on the villages of Gévaudan, with between 30 and 35 deaths documented in that period. And here, something revealing about human nature and power took place. The king, convinced the beast had already been killed, offered almost no help. With no aid from outside, the locals had to fend for themselves. In fact, there was censorship. For the crown, admitting its royal marksman had failed would mean looking ridiculous before a Europe already mocking French incompetence. So the new deaths were covered up. Months passed, and we arrive at the finale on June 19, 1767. The attacks didn't end until a nobleman of the province, the Marquis d'Apcher, organized a hunt. It took place on June 19, 1767. Among those present was a local farmer and innkeeper named Jean Chastel. He was the one who fired the shot that killed the beast. And from that day on, something changed forever. The killings stopped for good after this event. Now, here we need to separate history from legend, because from this moment, one of the most famous myths of horror was born. Later writers turned Chastel into a legend. They claimed he had used a silver bullet to kill the beast, and that when the animal's stomach was opened, undigested human remains were found inside. From that grew the idea that the werewolves of folklore could only be killed with a silver bullet. Yes, you heard right. A good part of the modern werewolf myth, the silver bullet, can be traced back to this real story. But those details, the silver, the remains in the stomach, are legendary additions, not proven facts. So what was the beast of Gévaudan really? The theories are endless. Historians and scientists have suggested it was an escaped lion, a prehistoric survivor, or even that Chastel himself trained an animal to attack people, to divert attention from other crimes. On that last idea, the human killer, we should be honest. It's a popular theory, but a flimsy one. Several books and articles evoke the work of a serial killer, perhaps a beast tamer, sometimes identified as a son of Jean Chastel named Antoine. Yet no document backs up this hypothesis of human involvement, which is essentially shaped by fiction. In fact, all the eyewitness accounts state that only an animal was involved. The most rigorous explanation is also the least spectacular. The historian J.M. Smith, author of a landmark study on the subject, sums it up like this. Smith thinks the answer is more mundane. The best explanation is that Gévaudan suffered a severe wolf infestation. In other words, there may not have been a single beast, but many large wolves attacking isolated communities. And this fits with a broader fact. Wolf attacks occurred all across France during this period. They're estimated to have caused up to 9,000 deaths nationwide between the late 16th century and the early 19th. So why do we remember Gévaudan and not the thousands of other cases? What made the Gévaudan attacks memorable was their violence and their above-average death toll, along with the press's ability to turn them into a gripping national story. And there's the real twist of this story. The beast of Gévaudan may not have been a single, inexplicable monster. It was most likely a real tragedy, poor peasants devoured by wolves, amplified into myth by a wounded nation that needed an enemy to face, and by newspapers that discovered fear cells. As for the numbers, let's be precise, because they vary a lot depending on the source. A 1987 study of contemporary sources estimates around 210 attacks over the 3 years, with 113 deaths and another 49 wounded. Other official documents lower the figure to just over 80 dead. We'll never know exactly. What we do know is this. For 3 years, in a forgotten corner of France, fear had a name, and behind that name were real victims, children and women who walked out into the fields one morning and never came back. That's the darkest truth of Gévaudan, not that it was a demon, but that it was, most likely, something as real as a hungry wolf, and even that was enough to terrify an entire nation.